Funding for this program is provided by Bruce Foods Corporation, makers of the complete line of Cajun King seafood seasoning mixes and other distinctive Louisiana-style food products.
Louisiana. Hello, I'm Chef John Folse, welcoming you to this great state of ours. We're real proud of our people, places, and food, and I'd like for you to know a little bit more about it. So join me and some of my friends as we visit the historical food towns of this state and cook up another great Taste of Louisiana. Y'all, and welcome to Taste of Louisiana. I'm Chef John Folse, and boy am I happy that you stopped by today because we're visiting some of the historical food towns of Louisiana. Today we're going to go to Vernon Parish, to the town of Leesville, and to Allen Parish, to the little town of Grant, Louisiana. Here we are in Leesville. We're at the Museum of West Louisiana in Vernon Parish. It's also the tourist center. This museum is in the old Kansas City Southern Depot, built right around the turn of the century, and is run totally by volunteers. The museum houses one of the greatest collections of memorabilia from the old lumber industry, which was very, very big in that area. In fact, it still is very big today. It also has one of the largest collections of all memorabilia from the railroad industry, obviously being in one of the old Kansas City Southern depots. Look at all these nice cases here, just filled with all of the great things of days gone by. This is artifacts from World War I. You saw these nice old guns and ammo, helmets. I guess this is from old plowboys, old doughboys, mess kits. I tell you, that really brings it down to my level, doesn't it? The horns from the Civil War, fiddles of the early days of Louisiana music. Well, I don't know if these bills are any good anymore, but I tell you, near and dear to my heart, money from the Confederacy. One of the greatest doll collections is housed right at that museum. Here we are in Allen Parish at Grant. In fact, this is Huey and Kathleen Bailey's Christmas tree farm, and we're doing a little cane syrup. I'm hooking up Jenny, the old mules. I tell people all the time that I was born and reared on a plantation. Some people don't believe it, but look at me just putting all the gear on old Jenny to get this mill that we're going to ground the cane in cranked up here in just a minute. Once Jenny's hooked up to the pole, we begin to feed some of the blue ribbon cane stalks right into this old turn-of-the-century mill. And if you can believe it, that this is the way that cane syrup and cane juice was ground at the time that Etienne de Boré first crystallized sugar in Louisiana back in the late 1700s. And still, here at Grant, Louisiana, they're producing cane juice in the same way to boil down to make some of that great blue ribbon cane syrup that we serve on biscuits and pancakes. I tell you, I'll drink anything. This is right out of the mill, and what a nice, refreshing juice, fresh squeezed cane syrup. This is the fire of the old boiler where we're actually doing open pot. This is clarification of cane syrup right out of the open kettle. About 200 gallons of cane juice, fresh squeezed, is boiled over an open wood fire in this kettle and reduced down to 30 gallons of some of the most precious golden syrup ever produced in Louisiana. And I tell you, Huey Bailey right there and Kathleen at that farm produces some of the best syrup in all of Louisiana. I use it all the time. Well, I want to tell you a little bit about who's going to visit with me in the kitchen in just a minute. I've got a lady from Allen Parish. She's from the town of Grant. She's a cook. She's been cooking for 21 years. She goes by the name of Aunt Matt. Her name is Madeline Turner, and she's a great friend of mine, and she is notorious for one of her dishes, and we're going to meet her a little later, and I'll tell you what she's notorious for. But let's start to cook a little bit. What is the first dish that I'm going to prepare for you from one of these historical towns. I'm going to do a sauteed vegetable dish. And this sauteed vegetable dish today could be a vegetable casserole. It could be a stuffing. In fact, let me fire up my old black skillet and get it good and hot. It could be a stuffing, because I think the only difference in Louisiana between a stuffing and a dressing is one thing. Does it go into a bird or does it go into a bowl? If it's a bowl, well, I guess it's a dressing. If it goes in a bird, I guess it's a stuffing. That's the only difference. What I'm going to do is put a little bit buttery flavored oil out of my old Madeline oil bottle. People ask me about these all the time, and I try to remind them that this was one of the old Madeline oil bottles. 6 of these used to come in a little wire cage when you went pick up oil at the service station to put into the Model A's at the turn of the century. Of course, I put a little something different into it today. I'm going to put the oil in my skillet, turn it on high, obviously, and then to saute my vegetable stuffing here, I'm going to begin as we do with everything else in Louisiana. I'm going to begin with a little bit onions, celery, and you know, it's strange that even in vegetable cooking in Louisiana, we begin with the trinity of flavors: onions, celery, and bell pepper, as we call it, the trinity in Louisiana. We always begin everything we cook with these 3 vegetables. Of course, I always add a couple things of my own. You know how much I love garlic. So I'm going to put a couple nice spoons of garlic down into the black iron pot, and then some red and golden bell pepper, because not only is it good flavor, but it's beautiful for color in the pot, and you know how I love that. A little gold and red pepper. I'll stir this around for just a second because I want to wilt the vegetables. Nothing else, nothing more, just a little bit wilting of the vegetables. I want to keep them crunchy because remember, as a stuffing, it's going to cook just a little bit longer also once it goes into the bird. So I'll saute that around. Look how pretty all of those colors are in the pot. That's almost good enough to eat just like that. Now, I'm going to flavor this. If you can take a good look at this platter on my table here, I'm going to flavor my squash today with Tasso. Tasso is the flavored smoked meat of Louisiana. It's a little ham that originated when the butchers would have a little piece of meat left over and would flavor it with pepper and garlic and hang it on a nail in the side of the smokehouse and smoke it over pecan wood for a couple of hours, and would always have a few pieces of Tasso left over to flavor a nice pot of beans or to flavor a really nice, wonderful casserole, or just as we're doing today, a stuffing. So I will also put a little bit of the Tasso, which is finely diced, down into my saute pan, a couple nice little handfuls. You know I don't like to measure anything. Then I'm going to put shrimp. This is a marriage of meat and seafoods down into the black iron skillet. And again, you're seeing one of the natural things in Louisiana cooking, a marriage of meats, vegetables, and seafoods all into the same pot to create a flavor that we like to refer to as Louisiana cooking. Nothing like it. All these great flavors coming together in the pot. Very few cultures actually combine that many flavors, but in Louisiana we would do nothing else. So here we are with all of that. Now for the vegetables. I'm going to add the zucchini squash. I'm going to add a little bit of the summer squash. And then I'm going to add some melliton or chayote squash, and I want to talk to you about that. I'll move all of that around in the skillet for a second. Let me tell you what chayote squash is, or as we in Louisiana refer to it, as melliton. And melliton is the squash that came to us from South America when the Cajuns arrived in the late 1700s. And it's a very nice white squash. You can see the seed right in the middle that needs to be plucked out right here. And once that happens, we just dice it up nicely, and it becomes one of the great squash in Louisiana cooking. Fact is, melliton, or chayote squash, is the premier squash in our cooking here in Bayou Country. Okay, I'll stir that around for a second, and I'll make sure that the vegetables themselves become nice and wilted, because we want the squash, which has a tendency to be a little bit bland all on its own, we want that squash to start to pick up all of the great, great flavors of the shrimp, and of course the smoked Tasso, the onions, the celery, the bell pepper, the garlic. And to ensure that it'll be nice and tender, I'll add a little touch of chicken stock. Of course, I could add a vegetable stock, or I could add just a little beef bouillon cube, anything that I wanted to right into it to make sure that my squash stuffing would be very nice and tender. So you can see how hot that black iron skillet is, and that's why I love to cook in this black iron. It just really cooks nice and evenly, as all good black cookware does. Now, I'll season with a little touch of salt, a little touch of cracked black pepper, thyme and basil. Of course, again, use whatever flavorings you would like into your stuffings or casseroles. A little bit Louisiana hot sauce, because I like the little spice, and I'll even put a little touch of Worcestershire down into it. Now, once that's sauteed, this hadn't been cooking but just a couple of minutes, I'll now pick up all of those great vegetable stock flavors in the smoke of the andouille. I'll dust in a little bit Italian breadcrumbs. This is the seasoned Italian breadcrumbs, and they also have a tremendous amount of flavor all their own, so that'll pick up all the moisture, and this vegetable stuffing with the tasso and the shrimp from the Gulf of Mexico will all have come together to flavor this into just one of the most magnificent vegetable casseroles or stuffings you'll ever eat. And basically, that's all you're going to do here, but I'm going to use this for something else. I could put it in a big bowl. I'll cut the fire off here. I could use this as a vegetable casserole. I could put it in a nice bowl and serve it. I could put it in the oven and bake it, but I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to stuff some of these wonderful rock Cornish game hen that you're going to be able to look at here right in this old wooden bowl. The rock Cornish game hen, of course, are a really nice size, and they're a nice tender bird. I like to stuff either the young spring chicken, quail, of course, or the rock Cornish game hen. And I begin by seasoning the rock Cornish hen on the outside with a little salt and pepper, and again a little basil, a little thyme, whatever you would like in your own flavors. I always encourage people to use whatever they would want to use. I've stuffed one, so I'm going to go ahead and take some of this wonderful fresh stuffing right out of my skillet. I'll just get a nice spoonful of it. And I'm not going to season the inside of the bird, because I want you to remember that all of this stuffing is fully flavored already with the shrimp and the tasso, and I don't want to over-season this bird. So I'm going to just stuff enough in there, and you will never, or should never, put hot stuffing in a cold bird unless you're going right into the oven with it. That's very important. Don't ever put hot stuffing, as I did, out of that skillet unless I know I'm going right into the oven, and I know I am, so that's why I did that. I'm going to glaze the outside of the Cornish hen with wonderful Louisiana cane syrup. This is going to make a beautiful glaze right on the outside of the bird, and I'll paint it on just like this. And as these birds begin to roast, you can imagine the wonderful flavor that this cane syrup will give these birds as it comes to browning in the oven and puts that nice crystallized brown sugar taste on the birds. Now, I've also got a little additional flavor that I'm going to do here. In fact, let me move this skillet, because you've got to take a good look at this saute pan, at this baking pan. I want you to take a look at what I'm putting these Cornish hen in. Get a good look at that. This is a Mandarin baking pan. I've taken fresh Mandarin slices and I've put in the bottom of the baking pan. I'm going to put the Cornish hen right on top of the mandarins, and I always put something on the bottom of my roasting pan, as I did here, to keep the birds from sticking to the bottom, but yet also to pick up additional flavor, as I've done. I'm also putting some fresh, I want you to take a look at this. This is beautiful muscadines that grow wild all over Louisiana. So I'm going to put some muscadines for additional fruit flavor around the hens. And of course, hey, the necks, the livers, and the gizzards must go into the pot. That's my favorite piece of the chicken, is those little necks. I would never throw those away. And then I've zested a little bit of the mandarin peel to go right on top of the Cornish hen. Is that a beautiful looking dish or what? Now that's going to bake at about, I'd say 350 to 375 degrees with the lid on for about an hour or so. These birds are very tender. I've got some already done. I want to show you what they look like. Move this out of the way and get these out of the oven for you. Wait till you see this. I don't think there's anything simpler or anything nice. I'll let you take a look at this while I close that oven door. Look at those little birds in there. You can see how all of the great flavor of the oranges and all those wonderful things have come together in this pot to really create a great flavor. I'm going to plate up a few of these, and I want you to take a look at this platter that I'm going to serve them on. This is Mason Vista ware that came out of England in the late 1700s. What a gorgeous plate. You know, you have to try to get everything looking good when you're serving a table, and nothing is better than selecting just the right platter. And I'm going to put a few of these Cornish hen. Just take a look at this. Oh, I tell you, I could stop cooking right this minute and start eating. Can you imagine this? They're so tender, they're really just about to fall apart as I'm sitting here talking to you. They're just about to fall apart in my hands. That's how tender these little birds are. And, of course, you can continue to garnish with a little more purple cabbage. You can see how pretty all of that is. And you want it to look good. And that's what this dish is going to look like. Rock Cornish game hens stuffed with Louisiana squash stuffing and, of course, a little Mandarin and Muscadine glaze with the cane syrup on top of it. What great flavors in Louisiana cooking. And I'll just put that here. And if you want to stop by in a minute, hey, you can eat some of this. Now, what would I serve that with? Look at this beautiful, nice praline flan for dessert. Beautiful praline flan. And I've got some cane syrup rather than caramel right on top of this. I've just poured some fresh cane syrup right down on top of the flan. And I mentioned to you a minute ago that you could use the stuffing as a dressing or as a nice vegetable casserole. And that's what I've done. I've taken some of the leftover dressing or stuffing after it went into the game hen, and we went ahead and put it into a bowl. Now, this could be baked with a little breadcrumbs on top of it. Makes a magnificent side dish to the stuffing, because I guarantee you, you will want a lot more than what's inside of that bird. All the shrimp and the onions and celery and garlics, and use any vegetable you want. Don't just limit it to the squash. You can use whatever vegetables are right around your little area there. Okay, let me see. I've got all of that done. I told you a minute ago that I had one of the greatest friends from Grant, Louisiana, old Aunt Maddie, I call her, and I tell you, not only is she a great cook, she is notorious.
Hey, boy, I have come a long ways with these biscuits to try to bring you something. You wouldn't come get me. You don't have any coffee in this joint?
I got coffee sitting right here. You starting to jump me before you even get in the kitchen. Look, let me tell you one thing. I was just about to tell my friends here that you are notorious for one thing, and that is biscuits. This lady is known for making the best biscuits in all of Louisiana. Not only North Louisiana, South Louisiana, Central Louisiana, wherever Aunt Matt is, you can bet there's going to be some great, great biscuits. I appreciate you bringing these over here. Now,
well, you're welcome.
Hey, how you been?
Well, I've been fine.
Well, I should say, where have you been?
Well, I've been in Grant.
You know, last time I was in Grant, you gave me a great lesson. Hey, welcome to my kitchen. Last time I was in Grant, you gave me a great lesson in biscuit making. You really did. In fact is, I want to share some of those scenes with our good old buddies out here so that they can see what you do. I want you to tell me a little bit about what we're doing here. Where are we right here?
Well, we're at Hugh and Kathleen Bailey's Christmas tree farm, and they have a big kitchen, and in the kitchen, I'm the cook. I make biscuits. And we have 3 big wooden stoves that you cook the biscuits in.
Boy, what a beautiful bowl right here.
Now, Tinker Johnson made those bowls, but he passed away.
Yeah, I know. Tinker made me one of those bowls himself. What a great bit. How much flour do you have in this thing?
I imagine it's about 10 pounds.
As I look at the size of that biscuit, when they told me that you made the best doggone biscuit in all of Louisiana, I had to search miles around to find you, but I eventually found you. Look how light these things are. And the size, how big around are they?
Well, at school, where I work, we weigh them. and they're supposed to weigh 2 ounces. So I would imagine that's about a 3-ounce biscuit.
Man, look, can you imagine putting fresh Louisiana sugarcane syrup right onto the center of one of those gigantic biscuits? That thing is so light. And this syrup, now this is not molasses. A lot of people confuse cane syrup with molasses. The molasses has been taken out of this cane syrup, and it is the sweetest thing you ever put on a doggone biscuit.
Now, if a bald-headed man eat that biscuit, it grows hair.
I tell you what, well, you know, I'm getting a little bit bald in the back. Why don't we put just a little bit, why don't you give me another 1 or 2 or 3 of these biscuits
Well,
to
you
take home
eat the
with me?
biscuits and you'll have hair.
I have never seen a biscuit or tasted a biscuit that was any better than that one right there. And I tell you, I got to congratulate you because you are, without a doubt, the premier biscuit maker in all of Louisiana. I want to share something with all of my people out here. You and I figured out one day that working at the Fairview School, that over the last 21 years in that lunchroom, you have fed over 3 million Louisiana school kids. Is that right?
That's right.
Let me tell you something. Do they remember you?
Well, I think they do. I think they remember me. There was a little boy that was a new child at our school, and he happened to come by that day, and he stopped at the dish machine where I was working that day, and he said, Miss Madeline, can I ask you a question? And I said, yes, you sure can. He said, are you all these kids' ain't? And I said, no, not really. And he said, well, they all call you Aunt Matt. And I said, well, they just call me that because they want to. And he said, well, can I call you that? And I said, well, one more won't matter. So he said, well, bye, Aunt Matt, and he took off. He seemed to be pretty happy.
You know, when I went to find Grant, Louisiana, when I went to find Huey Bailey's Christmas Tree Farm and Syrup Mill, I tell you, I rode through all of those piney forests and piney hills of central Louisiana. I rode for about 3 or 4 hours trying to find Grant, and eventually I did. And I was wondering as I was driving, I said, what would be the motivation for somebody to live way out in the wilderness like this when there's Lake Charles, Louisiana right here, and there's Alexandria, Louisiana over there? Why would somebody want to stay in Grant?
But you see, you can't have the peace and quiet in Ellick and Lake Charles that you can have at Grant. And then you can't have the family friends. And I'm talking about a friend in need. Well, when if one morning that you wake up and you decide that there's an illness in the community that needs help, and you decide right quick you want to put together a gumbo and a cake auction and make $4,500 in one night, I don't think you could do that in Ellick or Lake Charles.
I guess people are so close together in small towns. They grew up together. Their ancestors are still on the same little plots of land.
It's just one big happy family.
Well, I tell you, we had some great days we spent out in Grant, and not only walking the Christmas tree farm, but cooking on those wood ovens. Are you an expert biscuit maker?
Well, I don't know about that, but every woman in Louisiana that knows how to cook, or man either for that matter, is an expert.
Well, I appreciate you saying man too, you know.
Well, yes. There are good men cooks, so everybody's an expert if he cooks in Louisiana. Because when you see these Yankees come down south, they never leave when they get something to eat. They all decide they want to stay. So that's the reason we have all the North move down here.
Well, I guarantee you one thing. I agree that every cook that I've ever met, whether it be North, Central, or South Louisiana, was an expert at something. You could knock on any back porch door and ask for a cake or a pie or a roast, and if they had it in that house, it was one of the best you ever ate. And not only that, they'll go to fighting you over the discussion on who's the better cook.
Oh, yeah.
I see families fighting each other. I know how to do that dish.
Fight over the menu, too.
You know, I want to do a dish. I tasted those biscuits of yours, and I came home with a nice batch of them, and I got to thinking that they're not only good for breakfast in the morning, they're good for everything else, and I made a dessert with your biscuits. You're not going to believe this. Y'all gave me some blueberries, and you gave me some blueberry wine, and you gave me the biscuits. And when I got back home, I decided to create a dessert, and I want to show you what I did.
I didn't give you the wine to put on the biscuits.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I gave you that for us to drink. Oh, we fixed the biscuits.
Okay. Well, we can do that too. We can drink a little bit. I'm going to put the fire under that black iron skillet. You got a wooden spoon right there. How's the coffee?
Oh, the coffee's great.
How's the coffee? You know, the coffee's pretty doggone good down here in South Louisiana.
Yes, this is fine.
You know what we're going to do? We're going to do a cane syrup blueberry cream to go over these biscuits. And I'm going to tell you, you ain't never eaten nothing this good. I'm going to put a little bit cream. Now, of course, you can use skim milk and you can thicken it a little bit. I don't want people to say, oh, well, I can't do this dessert because it takes heavy whipping cream. Use pasteurized skim milk. Use whatever you want to do. You can tighten it up with some other things. So I'm going to put a little cornstarch in this recipe before it's over with. But we're going to bring all of that to a nice little boil. And then I'm going to put, again, that wonderful cane syrup. Now, Huey makes, I don't know how many gallons of cane syrup Huey Bailey makes out of that open kettle clarification system he's got. But I tell you, I brought back a few gallons, and I'm already out of it. So I'm going to have to go back and make another little run. But this is some right here. And instead of putting sugar, why don't you stir that up? I'm going to put a little bit of the cane syrup to really sweeten that milk, and it's going to give it a flavor that's unlike any other sweetener in all of the world. Only cane syrup will produce this wonderful, wonderful flavor, and it's not molasses. It's much more of a nice, sweet flavor that's very pleasant to the back of the palate. I'm going to put a little cinnamon and nutmeg, just like that. A little cinnamon, a little touch of nutmeg, a little vanilla, naturally. Got to put a little vanilla into it. And I would just let this boil for, just a couple minutes for the sugar to melt in it, for the cane syrup to melt. And then I would put in, that's right, I'd put in a little bit fresh blueberries right down into it. And then I'd let those flavors come together, but I'd put a touch of this great blueberry wine right into that. Can you imagine that? Now,
that ought to make any biscuit good.
Hey, you don't only have to put that on biscuits to be good. You could imagine putting that on a nice big old bowl of praline ice cream.
It wouldn't be too bad on cornflakes.
Let me ask you something. You did all of your biscuits on wood cooking quickly. Is there a difference to cooking biscuits on wood and gas and electric?
Oh, yes. Because whenever you get that wood smoking anything, it's got to be better. So you go in the woods and go camping, and you build your fire, and just any kind of wood smoke.
It's going to pick up that wonderful smoke.
Yes, sir. I did that one time, and my husband licked me for a week.
Okay, look, this is going to thicken up quickly, and hey, thank you so much for coming. We're going to pour that on top of the biscuits. I want to thank you all for joining us, and please come back as we continue to cook up more of these great Taste of Louisiana. Start it up, and we're going to put it on top of the biscuits right here.
Funding for this program was provided in part by Bruce Foods Corporation, makers of Bruce's Yams and other distinctive Louisiana-style food products.
Chef John Folse has written a cookbook that allows you to explore the exciting world of Louisiana cuisine. The Evolution of Cajun and Creole Cuisine is a full-color, 352-page book containing food history and recipes for gumbo, jambalaya, makshu, and other Cajun dishes. For your copy, send a check or money order for $24.95 to Louisiana Public Broadcasting at the address on your screen. To use your credit card, call toll-free 1-800-973-7246 or visit our website at lpb.org.